You asked and I've answered. Answering your questions today. Stay tuned. In a video I did a few weeks ago, I asked you to ask me any questions you wanted to ask or make any requests you wanted to, and I would honor those and answer your questions. So that's what we're doing in today's video. Now, I am so grateful that I got so many questions. Thank you all so very, very much. So I'm going to have to break this up into two parts. So this will be part one of answering your questions. So the first question comes from Connie, and she wanted to know, have you ever been a big girl? Have I ever been a big girl? And the answer to that is no. I have been the same my whole life, give or take 5 pounds. If I can find some pictures from years ago, I'll insert a couple here. Well, this is the earliest one I could find. That was when I was 7 years old in 1959, my first Holy Communion. This was when I was in high school. I was 17 years old. And I can't find any from when I was in my 20s, but that's when I was with my first husband. So maybe he has them. But this is when I was 30 years old and I married Dave. These two pictures are when I was in my early 40s. Maybe around 43, 44. And these are pictures when I was in my 50s. I think I have 3 here. And this is when I was 64, and then I started my channel in my late 60s, so of course you can see me in all my videos. So I've always looked pretty much the same as far as my body shape. My whole family is on the slim side. My sister, my brother, my mother was always slim. And my dad, he wasn't thin, but he wasn't a big man. The second question comes from Donna. She asked 2 questions. Am I close to my siblings? And the second question was, how did I meet Dave? Well, am I close to my siblings? Yes, I am. I have a brother that's 3 years younger and a sister that's 3 years older. Now, we weren't always close. Growing up, my brother and sister were very close, but not with me. They were close with each other. I'm that middle child, if you know what I mean. And over the years, as we got older, we became close. Now, I became close with my brother earlier than I did my sister. And a lot of it was because both my brother and sister live in Pennsylvania, and I have always lived somewhere else. So I wasn't in the same town with them. We didn't get together for holidays and birthdays and things like that. My sister and I really clashed while we were growing up. She just didn't want to have anything to do with me, and maybe I can understand why. She was normal, normal. She did everything that most kids do and had fun and everything, and I was the total opposite. I was more of a homebody. I liked playing with my dolls until I was about 15 years old, and I wasn't a real social person. She ran around in a large crowd, had a lot of friends, went to all the football games and activities and everything. I didn't do any of those things. But recently, in the last 3 years, my sister and her husband bought a house here in South Carolina in this community. So they are less than a mile from me. Now, they're not here permanent full time yet, but they will be starting in November. For the last 3 years, they've come down for 6 months at a time. And we have grown very close. I just really love my sister and my brother. And I'm so thankful for this time to have with my sister. As far as how I met Dave, well, I've done a video on that. It might have been 1.5 years ago. And I will link that video below if you want to hear the whole story. But basically, I needed a job. I had left my first husband after 13 years of marriage, and I found a small house to rent, but I had nothing. Well, I needed to make money to be able to pay the rent and to buy food for me and the kids. So I applied for any job. I didn't care what it was, just something that I could earn a paycheck to pay my rent. So I got a job at a copier company as a receptionist. Well, Dave worked there also, and he was a technician. So we met there at work, and we went out on about 5 or 6 dates. Not very many, because I also worked at a grocery store in the evening and on Saturday, so I didn't have any time. But after 2.5 months, we were married, and that was 40 years ago. The next question comes from Anne. Now I have 2 Annes. This one is ANNE. And she asked if I'm an only child, and of course I just answered that. No, I'm not. I'm a middle child. I have a brother, younger, and a sister that's older. She also asked, have I ever had to watch my weight? And the answer to that is no. I'm a high-strung person. I have a very high metabolism. I'm sure it's slower now than it was when I was younger, but it's still pretty revved up. I love sweets, I love candy and cakes and cookies, and I've just been very, very fortunate that I could eat whatever I wanted because I burn it off. I'm always on the move. I don't sit still. The next question comes from Ella. Ella's so sweet. She just wanted to know how I'm doing. Well, Ella, thank you for that. I'm doing quite well. As you know, my mother has been settled and has more peace due to the medications they've been giving her. That has lifted such a heavy burden off of me, just worrying about her and feeling so bad for how she feels. And my heart is lifted now. So I'm doing quite well, and thank you for asking. The next question comes from Sheila, and she asked if I have always been close to God my whole life. The answer to that is yes, except for a period of time in my life when my dad passed away. And I had a lot of questions about my faith and being a Christian and things like that. So I will answer that question separately and go into more detail. I'll probably make that just a video all on its own. But yes, Sheila, I have been. It's just the way that I was raised. The next question is from Paulette. Paulette told me that she has a secret crush on Dave. I thought that was so cute because someone else said that recently. I believe it was Elle from the channel L is for Living. And wow, that just really bloated Dave up because it's so funny. Older women, and I mean like in their 80s and 90s, absolutely love Dave. I mean, they're very open about their crush on him and how they flirt with him, but it's never been anybody younger. So when I told him that Paulette said she had a secret crush on him and that Elle made a similar comment, boy, he got a big smile on his face. Finally, somebody that isn't in their 80s or 90s actually have a little crush on Dave. And I don't blame you. I do too. Paulette asked another question. She asked if I do any gardening. Do I garden? No, Paulette, I can't garden at all. I love to look at beautiful flowers and plants, but I am no good at it. Anything I've ever planted or even bought, like a plant, they die. I don't know what it is. I do not have a green thumb, so I do absolutely no gardening at all. And I sure wish I could. She also asked, how do I get so tan? Well, living in South Carolina, the sun is very strong, and we have warm and pleasant weather a good part of the year. I'm outside a lot. I walk and I'm out in the yard. I'm picking up sticks or pine cones or things like that. I'm just outside all day. If I'm going to sit down and read something or even answer comments, I do it outside. So that's part of it, but not all of it. The other part of it is I do use self-tanners, and I use the ones by Jergens. They just give you a nice subtle coloring and glow. It's a gradual thing, and so that's how I keep looking tan. She also asked, do I lay out in the sun and do I go to the beach? No, I no longer lay out in the sun. I did back in the day, and I could do it all day long, but I haven't done that for years. I do go to the beach, but not that often, and not to be in the sun. I like to walk on the beach and look at the beach and be in that area, but not to lay and sunbathe. The next question comes from Sue, and she asked, how did I end up in Bluffton, South Carolina? Well, I believe I have a video on that too, so if I do, Sue, I will link it below. But basically we came here to check out the area because I have a friend that has a place here in this community that we are in. And she ranted and raved about it and told Dave and I that we should take a ride to South Carolina and just look over the area so that in the future, if and when we decided to retire, we'd have an idea of where we might want to be, because we definitely wanted to be in warm weather where we could enjoy it and be more active and be outside more often. Well, of course, we lived in Richmond, Virginia, so we took that trip here, fell in love with it, came back, put an offer on a house, and we've been here for 8 years and absolutely love it. I got several questions from one of my subscribers, Anne. Her name is spelled A-N, and she has a channel called Metabolism by Anne. So I'll answer a few of hers and then I'll close out this video and come back in the next video and do part 2 and finish up her questions as well as everyone else's. So Anne asked, did I work before I got divorced? And that was 40 years ago or 41 years ago that I divorced my first husband. Yes, I did work, but not for the whole 13 years we were married. for probably a year, maybe a little over a year of that. And I worked at a place called Tate Engineering. It was in Richmond, Virginia, and I was the receptionist. I didn't go to college. I had no formal training at all. I had no job experience because I was a stay-at-home mom. So that's where I worked before I got divorced. Another one of Anne's questions is, where did you work and what did you do after you divorced? Well, that's when I got the job at the copier company as a receptionist and where I met Dave. I ended up working at that company for 10 years and was promoted to a management position. And I worked for wonderful people. It was a family-owned company, and I'll never forget it and all that I learned, and I still keep in touch with them. And one of her other questions was, where did I work after I remarried? That's when I married Dave 40 years ago. Well, I was working at that copier company before I married Dave. That's where I met him. And then I continued to work there for the 10 years. After that, I managed a radiology practice, and I started out there as a receptionist, ended up the office manager, and I worked there for 10 years. After I left there, the doctor called me and asked me if I would do his billing, because he said he wasn't making any money like he was when I was there, and did his billing and would oversee his finances. So I didn't want to go back to work at the time, and he said, well, you don't have to. You can do it from home. I'll tell you exactly what you need to do. And so he did. I started a business. I became incorporated, and I was doing medical billing. From there, I got more and more clients, more and more doctors, and I ended up having a medical billing company, which we still have, but we're winding down. We just have a handful of clients now. And the doctor that owned this radiology mammography center, Dr. Fogel, he has been part of our lives for well over 30 years. Him and his wife, Miss Fogel, we still keep in touch with them and love them dearly. They have become lifelong friends. Anne also asked, how did I meet my current husband, Dave, which, as I said, we've been married for 40 years. I just answered that previously, Anne. So, again, you can also watch the video that I will link below that has a few more details in it. And Anne wanted to know what Dave did for a living. Well, he worked at that copier company where I met him as a technician. Then he went to work for Federal Express for 16 years as a computer tech. And then he worked with me on the medical billing company that I have. And he still does do the medical billing. And he also paints houses on the side. Well, I think I better cut it off here. I don't want it to get too long, but I will come back with part 2 and answer the rest of your questions. And again, I can't thank you enough for asking the questions. So this video is coming out on Tuesday, and on Friday, I will have part 2 of answering your questions. So don't miss that one. Well, now I'm going to leave you with an inside beauty tip. My inside beauty tip today comes from Romans 5:3-5. More than that, we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance. And endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been sent to us. The reason I wanted to read that scripture today is by doing this Q&A, you just have to give kind of short, brief answers to the questions. Otherwise, the video would be way too long. So when I answer a question and say, well, I got divorced, or after I remarried, or then I had this job or that job, it makes it all sound smooth and simple and things like that, when we know that it isn't. There is a lot of suffering and trials that go along with these kind of changes in life. And I know many of you have suffered in so many different ways. Divorce, no matter how much it is needed or required or has to happen, is painful. It is a painful process in every aspect, every way, shape, and form. To break up a family, to lose your dream and your hope, to hurt your children, to have them go through all of that. That's all very painful and involves a lot of suffering and heartbreak. Sometimes changing jobs can do the same thing and make those same feelings come to surface. We all know that sailing through life is not always cracked up to be. Over the many years that we have lived so far, there are peaks and valleys and ups and downs and good times and bad times, and so many feelings involved. So I just want you all to know that I understand that. I don't take anything lightly. When I talk about divorce, especially since I have been through that experience, as I said, that was a very trying time, and it can last for a very long time. And personally, I don't believe in divorce. I would not wish it on anyone, but sometimes, due to the circumstances, especially if abuse and things like that are involved, it just becomes necessary. You have no other way. For me, that involved a huge religious conflict, because being raised Catholic and very strict Catholic back in those days, Catholics are against divorce. Now, they might not be anymore, but they sure were then. And you had to go through such an ordeal to end a marriage within the Catholic Church, within their eyes and their rules and what they say. It's not just a matter of going to court and having a judge sign a piece of paper. So there is a lot involved, and there's a lot involved in many situations. So I just want you all to know that although we have to endure suffering and trials in our life, we're never alone. It really does build character. It really does build hope. It makes you who you are today. It gives you wisdom, and it gives you strength and courage to move forward in life. Always in joy, always in love, because these things will pass. And all we can say at the end of it is how grateful we are that we endured it, we got through it, and we grew closer to God. That's the way I feel about it. I thank you so much for being here today. I truly do appreciate it. This was so much fun, and Look forward to part 2 of me answering your questions. So until we meet again, this is the old girl signing out. See ya!